Hello, and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Tuesday, September 26th. My name is Ryan McClincy, and as a member of the Buckeye Scoop Podcast Network, it's my absolute pleasure to bring you today's episode. That being said, let's get you your daily Buckeye fix. Now, to do that, I'm going to call on the assistance of my guest today, none other than our very own Kirk Barton. Now, Kirk, I know you had the privilege to go to the game this weekend, and after just having so much to celebrate with the 52-21 victory, I think myself and everyone else is just really curious. How are you feeling today now with a couple of days rest?
I feel really great at this point. I think that, the biggest thing that can hold the team back right now is we seem to be a little snake bit when it comes to injuries. I worry about, losing both starting corners. We're all nicked up there, losing our number one receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think that given the schedule coming up with Rutgers and Michigan State, two teams that I think will not, they're going to be 4, 5, 6 touchdown underdogs going when they play the Buckeyes. I think it's crucial that you don't do anything with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Don't even let them dress for practice. Let them sit in the whirlpool, cold tub, get stem on that hamstring. I had a hamstring in an NFL training camp, and it's a miserable injury because you always feel like you're ready to come back. And as soon as you feel like you're ready, pull it again. So I think you just got to wrap him up until Penn State and just let him watch the next couple weeks, as hard as it is for him, because I know that he wants to be a first-round pick, and when you don't play, it's hard to be a first-round pick. But I think that for his career longevity and for our stretch run, you got to get that kid healthy. And Denzel's got the club. He had hand surgery. That's got to, we had a concussion with Cam Brown. So, just a lot of nicks and bruises. And I think that's just part of football. And there's some years are just like that, where you get the injury bug. And that's really my biggest concern. I think that the team, they looked great. There's a lot of some things that really need cleaned up on film. But, you always take the win, in the Big Ten, especially against a team like Wisconsin. You just want to win by 1 point. And we were fortunate enough to win by multiples of that, obviously. And I think they're just going to keep pushing forward and keep these guys healthy and ready to go for the stretch.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on a lot of stuff. Especially, I was curious your thoughts on Jackson Smith and Jigba and kind of when you put him back, because obviously, I don't necessarily think he's a necessity this weekend against Rutgers. Michigan State's not, I think, what a lot of people thought they were going to be, and so then do you take the bye? Do you put him back in Michigan State, ahead of that Penn State game? So I think there's a lot of flexibility. Luckily, I think we've got some freedom and some flexibility, and I think Penn State will be probably, like you said, probably the best case scenario. Just put him in some bubble wrap and let him sit on the sidelines and kind of be a secondary coach for some of these guys like Julian Fleming that are kind of getting their shot as well and taking over some of those snaps. I'm curious too, just with the environment, obviously Blackout, try to do it every year or, as often as we can, I guess, for kind of some of the recruiting stuff and just to get that atmosphere really excited. So I'm curious, kind of as you were there, just what was the overall atmosphere like? Are you a traditionalist when it comes to that stuff, or do you kind of prefer some of the Blackout kind of alternate jersey, different environments that we can put out?
I personally love the black jerseys. They are my favorite Ohio State jersey by far, more so even than the traditional road whites or the home scarlets. I like the all black look. I like the blackout. I think it's a little injection of excitement for the fan base. The fan base was largely in black, which it looked good. The stadium was blacked out. I think it's something that recruits get excited about, because I think a lot of these kids, they like the alternate jerseys, especially when they look as good as the all blacks do. And this is it's another layer of excitement. I think a blackout has a different level than, like I say, a scarlet out or a white out. White out's not really, I think that's a Penn State thing. Scarlet out, I don't think it's as intimidating as the blackout. Blackout, I think, is really special. And it worked. I think that, we had a great contingent of recruits in with Keon Keeley, the 5-star out of Tampa. We had some really, sidelines were jammed up with people. People were excited. Big night game against an opponent that traditionally, they beat us in 10, and they had early success in the early 2000s where they really were tough outs. But, the name Wisconsin, I think, is exciting. I don't think the team is anywhere near as good as they've been in the last, 20 years. But, getting that win, a quality opponent, national stage, it couldn't have really gone any better for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes.
Yeah, absolutely. and getting into a little bit more recruiting with Bill later this week as well for one of the episodes. So definitely going to dive into kind of how that impacted some of the conversations that are going on. But from the actual game itself, curious, just initial takeaways. What did you see? What kind of stood out to you the most from a player standpoint, as well as just, as you mentioned, going into a game against a tough conference opponent who usually plays us pretty well, and really just dominating from the opening snap. I mean, it was pretty quick that we were able to take over. So, what were some of those initial thoughts and initial people that stood out to you the most?
Well, I think Ryan Day and Jim Knowles, both as the play caller on offense and defensive, respectively, they're really in a great groove right now. Ryan's offense is very systematic in the way that he's using formations, motions. If you see a formation and a motion, he probably has 3 or 4 plays off of it. So it's hard to get a key on. Okay, Cade Stover is going in motion, so that's going to be a front side zone play. And then all of a sudden the next time they pull it, they run a bootleg. The next time they throw it, I mean. On the first drive, I think Cade Stover motioned 4 times in a row, which is something, as a tight end, generally, back in the olden days of Jim Tressel and traditional tight end stuff, they usually just have their hand on the ground next to the left or right tackle. They're deploying him out as a slot receiver. They're deploying him out as the wide receiver who's closest to the sideline, and they're motioning him across. So one time they motioned him across, and he wham blocked the backside end. The next time he went out in a route. I think Cade is an X factor in the offense now. He's an exceptional route runner. He's a legit 4.58-ish, 4.59-ish 40 guy. He gets open. He has great hands. He's tough. He has a great run blocker. I think if there was about a third of the season All-American team, he'd be on it. Frankly, I think he's got a lot of momentum right now just because he's really playing at a high level. I think that the offensive line is doing well, but I think that there's a lot of things that they can clean up from an assignment standpoint. And some of it's just with youth. Donovan Jackson had a missed assignment on the first drive where he was coming off the rock and linebacker backdoored him, and they missed it and they left the 3 technique unblocked, and that's the guy who made the play on a zone play. And I think that's something as Donnie, who I think is an exceptional guard, continues to play, he'll get that trust with Luke that they'll be able to do their job. And I think that sometimes these guys are amped up. It was the first play of the game, actually, and they try to do too much. And, with time and experience, you kind of get a better feel for combination blocks, especially with a center who's playing as high of a level of football as Luke Whippler is right now. So I'm really excited about the trajectory of the team. I think defensively, they are really, really vanilla. I think they've shown maybe 15-20% of the playbook based on what I've been told. They didn't have to go with as many heavy fronts as I predicted because our 4 guys up front really handled their offensive line, and our linebackers played well, and we were able to run the 4-2-5 versus Wisconsin, which I wasn't sure if we were able to do. We did run some 3 linebackers where they put Cody Simon as the Sam strong side linebacker, along with Steele at the will linebacker, and then Tommy at the Mike middle linebacker. And I think that Jim Knowles has been an absolute godsend to the career of Steele and Tommy. Tommy's playing at an All-American level at this point. And it reminds me very much of Pete Warner. Pete Warner is a guy who, if the NFL season stopped today, he'd be a Pro Bowler. I mean, he had another double-digit tackle game, and he's really emerging as the leader of the Saints defense, playing, the will middle linebacker spot. And he was a guy that in 2018, people weren't real high on him because schematically he was put in bad positions. He wasn't coached particularly well, and it really, I think, hurt him, even though he was a superior athlete, a great kid, and he's going to be a 10, 15-year NFL guy as long as he wants to play. I feel like Tommy's kind of that same guy. I don't think he was coached well last year. I think schematically he was put in poor positions, and that's all switched now that Jim Knowles is the linebackers coach / defensive coordinator.
Yeah, no, I really actually would be curious to see what Pete Werner could have done with a Jim Knowles led defense, because I agree. I mean, he's been playing lights out on Sundays, and not that he played bad. I mean, he was a great player, while he was here. I think he was probably pretty well underutilized in that defense and just undercoached. So I think Jim Knowles would have been a breath of fresh air for him while he was here. But you did bring up a couple points that I wanted to touch on as well. and that being offensive and defensive line. And especially with, teams like Rutgers, Michigan State coming up bye week before a game like Penn State, that's going to be kind of the I guess biggest test to this team so far. What, or I guess how do you take those guys and really improve the little things like that against teams that are going to be probably largely not as competitive? And with the offensive line has been playing better and better and better each week. How do you get them ready for a Penn State with those teams? And what I've seen from the defensive line is where we always seem to be just a half step off of getting to the quarterback. A lot of hurries, a lot of pressures, a lot of forcing them out of the pocket, but we're not quite there when it comes to the sack numbers and actually getting home. So I guess what do you see as the main pieces that can be fixed, and how would you go about doing that?
Well, I think from an offensive standpoint, especially an offensive line standpoint, when you're getting ready to play a team like Rutgers, teams like Michigan State, and they don't have the athletes to match up with you up front the way like a Georgia or an Alabama or even a Michigan would, they're going to have to move. They're going to have to be multiple. They're going to have to pressure, blitz. Because I mean, when you're Greg Schiano and you're Mel Tucker at Michigan State, you're basically going for broke because you're a 42-point dog, so you have nothing to lose. So you might as well, I mean, let it all hang out, take some risks, try to get home, try to force turnovers, try to get to CJ Stroud and affect them. Hope that maybe they're reading the press clippings and they're not, as tuned in for this game as you'd expect them to be. And that's the challenge for the Ohio State coaches. I mean, frankly, the Ohio State coaches have to keep these kids level and hungry. And because I mean, these kids are going around Columbus, they're going on to campus, going to class, and everyone's saying, wow, you guys are gonna, cruise on in to play Michigan. You might as well just roll the helmets out the next 7 weeks or whatever it is and get ready for Big Blue. But you gotta keep progressing. And I think that, Rutgers and Michigan State, the games aren't gonna be close, but I think that it's all in the mentality. And it's good to see some fronts like I'm sure Rutgers and Michigan State will run, where they are running a lot of different stunts, different pressures, different blitzes, different simulated pressures, things that can give an offensive line trouble. Now, granted, the athletes aren't going to be as good as teams you see in the playoffs, but it never hurts to go against some multiple looks because they're not going to play a static based defense versus our guys because our guys will simply bulldoze them. But I think that as these guys continue to gain cohesion, especially Donnie. Donnie's still a true sophomore. He's only made a couple starts, 3-4 starts, and he's got to keep on progressing. And all these guys can get better. I mean, all these guys, as good as they're playing, there are still a lot of little things that they can clean up to be even better. And with football, it's never perfect. There's always going to be plays that you wish you had back or looks you'd seen or whatever. But it makes it easy for Justin Fry and the guys in that room and Ryan Day to stay on these guys because even though they're dominating, it seems like Wisconsin, there's still a lot of little things they could clean up that could even make it even cleaner, even better, even stronger as the season progresses.
Yeah, no, I think those are fantastic points, and definitely got to stay. What's the word I'm looking for? I just lost every word that I had in my head. You got to stay true. You got to stay disciplined, I guess. That was the word, by the way. Disciplined in kind of run support, disciplined in how you're doing it. But I definitely think that over the next couple weeks, it'll be a lot of kind of fundamentals and just staying true, so that when we do come time to those bigger games, CFP type games, it will be in a much better position. Flip side onto the defense and defensive line, and just kind of getting so close and so close. I know JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, there were a number of times on Saturday where I see them in the backfield, see them just getting there, getting a hand up, getting in the face, and just not quite getting home. So what do you see as kind of the biggest reason for that? And how do you kind of get the sack numbers up from where we currently are?
Well, I think the biggest reason is that these teams are recognizing how good our ends are, especially JT and Jack. And even Zach Harrison has been very productive, more productive than he's been his whole career. But, a guy like Jack's productive. He's been from a pressure standpoint, not necessarily a sack standpoint, because he's only had maybe one or two. But he is getting double teamed and even triple teamed at times, and he's not getting those one-on-one rush opportunities to win. And they're sliding. If they double team on one side, they're going to slide to the other side because you're not. These ends are so good, you're not going to let them beat them. It's kind of like Freeney and Mathis, except they're just a bigger version. They're not quite the same pass rushers as those two were, but they're trying to say, hey, we'll take our chances with the interior guys outside of Mike, and we're not going to let these ends beat us because the ends they're really playing at a high level. They're both grading out as champions pretty much every week. Jim Knowles is very happy with what he's getting out of his ends, but the other issue is that these quarterbacks and offensive coordinators are like, hey, our guys can't block these guys, so we have to get rid of the ball very, very quickly, or else you guys are going to be in concussion protocol in the little sideline tent. So they're getting rid of the ball fast. Again, if you're Wisconsin and you know that you're going to be down both of your starting offensive tackles, you have to help out these backup tackles versus JT and Jack, who might be the two best defensive ends in the entire conference. So I think part of it, I'm sure, they're as frustrated as anybody's because all these kids that are defensive ends, they live and die by their sack totals. They want to get 15 sacks. They want to win the Hendricks Award for the top defensive end, the Lombardi. They want to win all of these major awards. They want to be All-Americans. And frankly, for a lot of the voters, they look at the sack numbers. And if you've got 5 sacks at the end of the year, you're not going to be an All-American. But, sometimes I think you have to look at the impact that they make in the run game and the impact they make in terms of the scheme, because if guys are getting double and triple teamed, it's hard to do it. But that being said, I think our interior guys, Ty Leak is starting to come on. He started with Toledo, is dominant against Toledo. Mike Hall obviously had a fantastic first week. So I think that young sophomore foursome has really been coming on strong, and I think that they're going to play more and more as the season goes on because those guys are all tough one-on-one matchups for opposing offensive lines. So it'll be interesting to see what Larry Johnson's rotation ends up being as the season progresses. So I think we're seeing less and less of the older guys and more of the younger guys.
No, absolutely. Guys like Tyler Friday, I know we're back there a lot in the game against Wisconsin. So it's good to see, getting some of that rotation and getting some of those guys in and involved, especially. But I agree. I think that sophomore group of 4 is really something special to watch, and I'm excited to see kind of how that all progresses as the year goes. Now, there is something that I wanted to just kind of initiate, and that is the highly coveted Scoop stickers. So if you had helmet stickers to give out to anybody from the game on Saturday, curious who you would give them out to. I'm going to go ahead and take the first one, Country Strong Cade Stover. I know he's been a topic of many conversations for you, but he was definitely something that wasn't expecting, and definitely well-deserved from a sticker standpoint from what he was able to do. The numbers don't really do it justice, in my opinion, as impactful as he was. But what are your thoughts? Who would you give a sticker to?
I mean, I'd go the whole offensive line just because I think we had a nice clean pocket for most of the day. We ran the ball really well. I think that our tackles are as good of a couple as there is in the country. When you look at Paris and what he does on the left side and Dewan and what he does on the right side, those guys are coming along really nicely. I think the interior, led by Luke Whippler, is really coming along. I think Matt Jones, these guys, they all have plays that they'd want back, but Matt is really stepping up. He's been playing really good in the running game, and he's been a force in the passing game. Donnie might be the most talented guy in the group, save Paris Johnson. And, he's got some young true sophomore moments, but he's got so much talent and so much athleticism that I think he'll end up being our left tackle to start next season. So I'd give those 5. And then defensively, I got to give Jack Sawyer one, and I got to give Tommy Eichenberg. And our 2 young corners. It's not easy when you're a true freshman in Jair Brown and you have to go start, after Denzel has a hand surgery, Cam has a concussion. So J.K. Johnson, Jair Brown, those guys, they got the call. Granted, they weren't going against, monsters on the edge, but they were still, Big Ten Wisconsin receivers, and they didn't blink. Their eyes weren't big. They weren't scared. So credit to those guys. Credit to Tim Walton, the cornerbacks coach, for getting those guys ready. Him, Perry Aliano, Jim Knowles protecting them. It's not easy when you're a true freshman, you're getting that call that early, but it bodes well for the future for Ohio State that those guys were able to get in there, get a start. They're now considered starters because they've got a start under their belt, and it helps when you're running five DBs, man. Sonny Styles is getting in there a little bit more, and Kai Stokes, and as the season goes on, man, there's going to be guys that are going to get their numbers called because it's tough at the Big Ten, and these guys are one play away from being starters because it's one concussion, it's one ACL, it's whatever, and you never want to see that with any of these players, but it helps when you have some guys that are playing, building depth, and really playing at a high level.
Yeah, I think we were a little spoiled last year with Denzel Burke playing as well as he did as a freshman. So we expect guys like a Jair Brown to come in and play that well. But I think it's also as a corner, you never really want your name called if not, or at least if it's not called, it's probably a good thing because you're not getting the ball thrown your way. But no, I think they played phenomenal given the circumstances, and definitely excited to see them continue to grow, and makes me more confident in that kind of play should somebody go down for the season, or be out for a more extended period of time. I'd throw in just a couple with McAllister with getting his first interception and in a big moment there too, as well as the receivers Fleming, Igbuka. They played a huge role. Igbuka with 118 yards, 2 touchdowns. Fleming just absolutely bodying people running through, finishing the play. So definitely loved seeing them perform the way they did. But those would be a couple more that I would add. And yeah, I mean, that'll do it here for us today. So as always, thank you for listening and or watching. For more great Buckeye content, be sure to download, like, and subscribe to the Morning Scoop podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to subscribe to the Buckeye Scoop YouTube channel. All of this and so much more is always available at buckeyescoop.com. So while you're there, do yourself a favor, check out the Ask the Insiders board and join the incredible community of Buckeye fans that are on the most premier site for all of your Ohio State news and insider information. As always, I am your host, Ryan McClincy. Kirk, thank you for joining this morning, and we look forward to having you on again here in the future. But until tomorrow, go Bucks.